Yeah. She said he's in San Antonio.
Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of October the 24th. It's a little chilly out there, but it's good to have so many of you here this evening. Madam Clerk, would you like to do the roll call, please?
Okay, Mr. Shyland?
Present.
Ms. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Present.
Ms. Reclue?
Present.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
Present.
Mr. Vaughn?
Present.
And Mr. West.
Here.
8 council members present.
You'd all rise with me. Pastor Bruce Williamson is with us this evening, and he'll lead us in the invocation. Thank you, sir.
Privilege, sir. Heavenly Father, I want to remember on behalf of the nation tonight 4 special ops who gave their life for our nation in West Africa. We thank you, Lord, for the commitment to liberty and freedom and service to this nation on behalf of all of our men and women in uniform. And these men, Lord, paid the ultimate price to see that America can be stable at home and safe and set the liberty, freedom bell to ringing throughout the world. Give others hope. Thank you, Lord, for them. I pray for all that are deployed in some very difficult and dangerous areas of our world. Holiday season approaching, we owe them our deepest gratitude, thanks, and prayers. I'm grateful, Lord, for those who lead this city, our mayor and council persons, administrators, department heads. Thank you, Lord, for public safety officers, both fire and Fulton Police, and all the first responders, those, Lord, whose work will increase as the weather gets colder and the streets, weather changes, streets are slicker, and there'll be greater hazards to deal with. We just pray, Lord, for the safety of those that keep us safe. I want to remember our neighbors, Lord, in Texas, West Louisiana, state of Florida, southern Georgia, and all through the Caribbean rim, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and the peninsula, still recovering from the hurricanes. We pray for old country of Mexico and those that are struggling, recovering from the earthquake. Our neighbors in California, where the fires are still burning, so much loss, so much devastation, situation and the recovery process, and families in Las Vegas. We have so much, Lord, that we must remember in prayer. These are our neighbors and fellow American citizens, and we pray for them. Locally, Lord, I continue to lift up, but don't limit this list to the ones I name by name. Certainly anyone who needs a touch from you would be included. I do include here Gabriel Polston and his family, his parents, Mayor Benton, Chief Myers, Mr. and Mrs. Reclue, Mr. Chyland, Mr. Moore, and any other who needs a sure touch from God. Bless this session tonight. I'm thankful, Lord, for all of those to my rear and right who will be participating in this meeting tonight. Any decisions, Lord, that are made here tonight following discussions, I pray that they're pleasing to you. We thank you for all this and these through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we get started this evening, we have an individual with us this happens to be his first city council with the city of Fulton. And we're very proud that Robert Boone is now our Assistant Director of Administration. And Robert, welcome. Would you like to come up and kind of introduce yourself? Much better than an old man trying to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Hello to everyone. I've met a couple of you. I got some information for you later. I come to Fulton from Jefferson City. I had 35 years of experience with the state. I retired from the state and thought I was going to get to relax for a little while. My wife said, no, you need to go to work. She was tired of seeing me sleeping while she was rolling out to work. So I applied, and you folks here have graced me with this opportunity, and I appreciate it. Let me know if I can do anything to help. That's it.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. Welcome. at the beginning of each council meeting, we set a time aside for citizens of the city or any visitor who has a concern that they'd like to share with the council on business that pertains to the city. And we just ask that you give us your name and your address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes, of which our city clerk will time you to help you limit that. So at this time, I invite anyone who has a concern they'd like to visit with the city about, and you're not already on the agenda, to please come forward. Very good. Again, anyone who'd like to share with the city council. Okay. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on with our agenda, and looks like we have 2 public hearings this evening. The first public hearing is for the City of Fulton budget and its 3-year capital program. And public hearings are, we operate in the following manner. I introduce subject, and I'll make 3 calls for people wishing to speak in opposition to the matter, and then likewise we'll make 3 calls for those who desire to speak in favor of the matter. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing for the Fulton City budget and the 3-year capital program. Is there anyone who is present who would wish to speak in opposition of the budget as presented? Seeing no one coming forward, I'll make the second call. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to the budget, 2018 budget? Again, no one coming forward. Third and final call. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of the 2018 proposed budget? Again, seeing no one coming forward, I'll now make 3 calls for anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the 2018 proposed budget. No one coming forward. Again, we'll make a second call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed 2018 budget? I'll now issue the third and final call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed 2018 budget? Very good. Thank you. I'll declare this hearing closed. Our second public hearing has to do with the issuance of a operating license to Paul Darcy, who will be operating as Star Taxi here within the city of Fulton. Again, same format, 3 calls in favor and 3 calls against. So at this time, I'll make the first call. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition of the proposed licensing for Paul Darcy? Yes. Sure. Sure. Yes, please come to the podium. I'm sorry.
I own the taxi company in Fulton right now,
Okay.
and there's not enough business in this town for another company.
Okay.
Can you give me your first and last name?
Ricky Lacey. I've been here since the 1st of March.
Okay. Very good. Is there any other reason that we should not?
No, just not enough business for 2 companies.
Okay. Very good.
I mean, I'm barely making it in this town,
I understand.
just with 1 taxi.
Well, we appreciate your efforts, and hopefully things continue on.
I hope it picks up.
Okay. Thank you. I'll make the second call. Or is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition of this matter for the proposed taxi service? Seeing no one coming forward, I'll make the third and final call. Is anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition of the proposed taxi service? Again, no one coming forward. We'll now move on to issuing 3 calls for those in favor. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed taxi service? Please come forward. You'll give us your name and address. Thank you.
I live in Columbia, Missouri. Paul Dorsey.
Okay.
So before living there, I was a long-time resident here. And in the most professional way I can say it, there's been a lack of a correct taxi service here, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion. I think there's way more than enough clients to distribute and share both businesses amongst the community. And I don't see any reason to not go ahead and state that. I did a business plan for this. I have 15 years experience in the matter, a Class E license and a Class A CDL. And I did part of that business plan was surveying this city in person, the actual residents. And again, not to infringe on this young gentleman over here, but there is a blatant need for my company here, and that's the only reason I'm here. On top of that, the company was started by this city. A lot of the board members may not remember me, or they may remember me, but I shot a film here, and from the proceeds from that film, I was able to get commercial insurance, get a car, start my own business, and go forward. So the city actually bred this company to come down here and feel the need for it.
Very good.
So
Thank you very much for your.
I'm here to take any questions too. Somebody might have about it.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't do the county, just the city? You
We
go out
just
in
do the
county,
city.
Just in the city?
We just do the city.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay.
And I'd just like to also state, away from that subject, that my business will be started to help the actual citizens here by a very low price, a standard price across the board that is the same all year. It does not switch, it does not deviate, it does not go higher. I saw a real need when I stayed in housing in a couple of places here for mothers who don't have protection, or dads, or husbands who need to get to Walmart, students who need to get there, stuff like that. So I'm just here to actually fulfill a need to help. I feel greatly flattered that I could even be in the position to help the city that helped me start it up. So
Thank
Paul,
you, sir.
if I want you to take me to Columbia, will you take me to Columbia?
yes,
You can do that,
yes.
okay.
I'm fully operational. I have 2 vehicles, and both of them have, as the city clerk learned, the over amount of coverage for insurance that you guys need me to have. You guys had a minimum base, and I'm about $100,000 over that for my coverage on my cars. So
Okay.
I'm more than capable of going to Columbia and St. Louis.
What are your planned business hours?
What'd you say, sir?
Your planned business hours for your service?
We plan to be here from 5 a.m. in the morning till around 11 p.m. on weekdays, and on weekends, we would stop the service at 3 in the morning.
All right.
So we have 3 drivers to fulfill that need.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be considering this application under new business later in the meetings. Again, thank you for your time. I'll now make the second call for anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this new taxi service. Again, seeing no one coming forward, I'll make the third and final call. Is anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed new taxi service? Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll now declare this public hearing closed, and like I say, we will consider this later in the meeting then. Okay. At each council meeting, we have what we call a consent agenda, and those items on our consent agenda this evening for approval are the minutes of the September 26th meeting, the October 10th meeting, the Director of Administration report, a trick-or-treating event for the schedule for October the 31st to be held in the Brick District, and also the United Methodist Church, and we'll have a trunk or treat event also on October 29. And they require a couple street closures and also the acknowledgement of the Human Rights Commission minutes and the Public Utility Board minutes of September the 25th. With each consent agenda, council has the right to take any item off of that and consider it individually. Are there any items that council would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, for clarification, I probably won't even have to remove it. I don't quite understand the street closing for Court Street, the church. Is that from the,
My understanding it is they're going to be having the bulk of the event in their parking lot, but they don't want anyone walking across the street, cars to be driving by, is my understanding. So they want to make sure that the streets are closed off. And I think they also plan to invite, I believe it's First Baptist Church, maybe, to try to expand.
so is it from on the request letter? It says here from Nickel Street and Nickel Street from St. Louis Avenue to 8th Street. So just from the
St.
corner
Louis.
there of St. Louis to
Mayor, I recommend we remove this item from the consent agenda.
Okay,
so we
I
can
think
speak
that
on
would be
it in
appropriate. We can go
detail.
into it. This item will be considered separately as our next item. Are there any other items that need to be removed from the consent agenda?
only if somebody wants to remove the Director of Administration report, other than that, I say accept the rest of them.
I'll second that. I want clarification which one we're removing from the consent
We're going to
agenda.
remove the Court Street Methodist Church request.
Item E.
Going to discuss.
And then we have a motion and a second to accept the remaining items.
Okay.
Okay, very good. I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none,
Do we,
go ahead.
I'd like to remove the other, the trick or treat item because I think there's still a question about the Red Cross Pharmacy. Is that the one that the Red Cross is questioning their drive-through? That if that, or is it the same?
Oh, I see.
I think they're two.
No, they two separate things.
Yeah.
Okay, then I move that we also remove that from the consent
Okay,
agenda.
both
because I think
trick or treat?
that's an item that needs to be discussed.
Okay, both October, end of October, next week
The 31st.
events, okay, or both removed.
Okay.
Okay, with that, is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the items remaining on the consent agenda, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good, thank you. So now, consider the trick-or-treating event for the annual downtown trick-or-treating event. I believe this is a chamber event.
That's the Brick
It's
District.
the Brick District every
Brick
year.
District, rather, I'm sorry.
Right, every year they do the downtown trick-or-treating event.
Okay, and is there some specific discussion on this?
Yeah, what's the?
There's a specific question from Red Cross Pharmacy. They've installed the drive-through.
Okay,
It allows people to come from Bluff Street and do a drive-through in that alleyway, and then they exit onto Court Street, and then it's usually a left-hand turn, and then people are able to make another left-hand turn there on, I guess,
Sure.
6th Street.
Mhm.
And if they close all of Court Street for the duration that they're requesting, then we're closing their drive-through.
okay.
And so I guess, I think we
believe
need
we
to
had-
give that some discussion and at least be able to vote on it specifically. That way we can, I I mean, that way Red Cross Pharmacy knows that this is the decision we're making, it's affecting their business.
Chief Myers, would you please come and address this?
I was thinking we had this discussion before on other items
Yeah.
as far as closure.
They always work that out.
Yeah, I think they've always worked it out in the
And
past.
this is on.
Well, we never approve closing Court Street without making a provision for Red Cross drive-through people to get out of there. Never.
Okay.
So that's just standard operating procedure?
Yes.
Okay.
The only, in fact, we even do that partially doing the street fair. But Red Cross
I see.
also has agreed through the street fair that they close that off. But
Right.
any time we close for the any of the Halloween festivities, Christmas, whatever we close Court Street for, we always make a provision so they can get out of there.
Okay, so they will be able to keep that drive-through open during that time period?
Certainly, always.
Okay. This is my first Halloween on
Oh, okay.
the city council, and,
Yeah.
and
No,
that
we never
comment
block.
was in our packet that they were questioning
No,
the
we never
provision
block them
being
off.
available.
Unless it's an event that they agree to do that.
Okay.
And whoever's holding the event always goes to them and tells them what they're gonna do, and we wouldn't allow them to close that off.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Okay?
Move for approval.
Thank you, Chief.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion of that? We do have a motion on the
Sounds good.
floor, I believe. to
Motion and a
approve that.
second?
Yep, and a second.
Is that correct?
Motion and a second.
Okay, motion and second. So if there's not any further discussion, I will call for the question.
Is that just for D?
Yes.
Yes.
Not,
Yes,
Correct.
no, we haven't considered it yet.
okay.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good, thank you.
Good question.
So that stands approved then. We'll now consider item E, which is United Methodist Church request for a trunk or treat event on Sunday, October the 29th.
And let's go out.
And they're requesting also closure of St. Louis Avenue from Court to Nichols and Nichols Street from St. Louis to 5th, or 8th rather. Do I have a motion to approve this, or then we
I
can have
would-
discussion, or you want discussion first?
I will make a motion to approve it. I think I figured it out that the way it's written is what confused me.
Sure, if you will. Thank you, Lynn.
Mr. Moore, the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, and the Christian Church are gonna go together and do a trunk or treat. And we'd like to block off St. Louis Avenue between Court Street and Nichols, that little short area there, and then block off West Seventh there at St. Louis Avenue. We'll have about 300 to 350 little kids running all in that area there, and we certainly don't want somebody to get hurt. And that's the idea of closing the street.
I
And on
don't
Sunday-
have a problem, just the way it was written
I
on this
understand.
one, I didn't quite
Okay,
understand.
is that cleared up for you?
That clears it up for me then.
Very good. Thank you, Lynn.
Motion
to approve.
Any other questions?
We have a motion on the floor from Councilman Moore.
Second.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
It might help in the future if we had a diagram of what's being proposed. I would suggest that for future closures of this type. Just a
Diagram.
little sketch,
So
might
noted.
clear a lot of questions up.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think it's a great idea. And on Sunday afternoon, we shouldn't see that much traffic in that area anyway, other than all the kids going to the trunk or treat.
That's the idea.
Okay, if not,
Have all the affected people on Nichols Street been contacted?
I can't say that they have, but, there's not much traffic at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon on Nichols.
I
We will
understand,
block
but
it
I
off,
believe there's a couple of residents
there's
in
2
that.
there, and we can notify those folks. They'll still be able to get to their house, they can come in off of east, I think that's 8th there, or west 8th there, I think they can get to their houses. But we'll see that they're able to get to their houses.
Okay, that's my request, is that the residents be notified.
Okay.
very good. All those in favor of approval of the request from the United Methodist Church, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, very good, thank you. Take care of that. Now move on to presentation of the financial reports for September. Ms. Holzweiler's with us again. And I'll turn it over to you, Kathy. Thank you.
I'll start out by telling you that sales tax collections were up 1% over the same period of time last year. And I made a notation that September was a 3 payroll month, so the expenses in every fund will be proportionally higher. So you need to keep that in mind as you review it. Pretty much business as usual during September. We did file a reimbursement request for an expenditure to expense of $432,000 at the sewer plant. The reimbursement will be $409,000. The difference is the retainage. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Very good, thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the operating statement for September. All those, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Ms. Holzweiler. Okay. We'll now move on to unfinished business. And I believe we're due a smart grid update. Daryl, do you want to take care of that, please?
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Squirrel.
Mr. Celebrity.
Oh, wow.
Squirrel. No. Squirrel, right there. Brought everything out.
See the dead squirrel?
I don't know how many of y'all know it, but we had an outage yesterday morning. We went over it at the U-Board meeting yesterday at 1 o'clock, but approximately 9 o'clock yesterday morning, we had an outage that affected about 74 customers. If you look at your handout in front of you, those blue stars are the outages. It looks like everything south of 6th Street, down to the roundabout, east of Court Street, and then over toward Boyd and Boyd was the end of it. Anyway, the outage happened, went downstairs. I don't know if anybody's noticed it or not, but downstairs where the customer service reps are, there is a monitor that has this map on it all the time. Looked at it, seen where the outage was, and the nearest protection device that was common to everything was that switchgear, that big green box sitting down there by the roundabout. Got a hold of Micah, which is the assistant electric supervisor. Chris was off. He was on the other side of town, putting in a meter. He came across town to the switch box, verified it was open. I drove the line, found a fuse blown over by the cabinet shop. Micah came up and fused the line while he was doing that. I drove the line and found a squirrel in the southwest corner of Boyd and Boyd.
That's what squirrel.
Squirrel.
Fried squirrel.
Fried squirrel.
Fried squirrel.
He refused it. We went down and turned the switchgear back on. Everything was back in service. Now, in the old days, before we had the smart grid, we'd have waited till people called in.
Right.
And the more calls we got, the more information we'd have to know what area was out.
That's cool.
So yesterday morning, it did give us a jump start. We knew what area was out because the substations were not affected. So SCADA did not show this outage. So 74 customers, about 41 minutes. We had everything back on. In the meantime, you had 2 officers up here at these 2 traffic lights directing traffic. And I don't know what business was lost at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning in the central downtown district. The newspaper was out.
There you go.
But we did want to point out, and we pointed out to the U-Board yesterday, one of the benefits of your system, and that part is functioning very well.
That's cool.
Carol, you reckon we can come up with some signage to post so those squirrels could read that in the
Trim trees farther back, I guess.
Yeah.
Trim the tree.
So, Daryl, the squirrel was the cause,
The squirrel was the
Squirrel.
requirement.
and then the
That's a
fuse
squirrel.
blew because of the salty ground, and then the disconnect opened?
Yeah, the disconnect, the
There you go.
relay and the switchgear seen it also and opened up.
Okay.
Isn't that something?
It's pretty quick
This is awesome.
information.
That for sure is.
But that's where we're at. And, we had a list of all the customers that was affected, and not counting them, it was 74 customers. So that's kind of where we're at and what I did yesterday.
Thank
Okay.
you for showing, pointing this out. Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
So how else are we doing? I mean, I read the Director of Administration report. It talked about
we
some
had
issues
one
we're
issue
still
we've
having
been
with
worried
reading.
about. Kathy and myself's been worried about it for quite some time. What if we had a piece of equipment fail? How long would the system reheal itself?
Yeah.
And there is 2 radio transponders. Each one of them has about half the meters on it. Well, one of them did fail
Okay.
since our last meeting.
Okay.
Well, it was also talking about some meters that we've had to send back to Tantalus.
Yes, we got them back and we've been installing them, and we did talk to them, and they are still warranting them. Kathy and I asked at our last conference call with them.
I was just wondering, are those infant mortalities, or are they
I don't know.
too early to tell?
Too hard, too early to tell.
Okay.
Well, sir, I have a newspaper article here talking about your smart grid. And from what I'm being told here, it's not as wonderful as you say it is. It says the old, dirty, creaky U.S. electric grid would cost around $5 trillion to replace. Is this the kind of a situation we are in? And if you like, you can have the copy of this newspaper
Yeah,
report.
I like it.
My point is it costing the citizens of Fulton more than what we are going to reap back from all of this?
Well, you know, one of the answers to that question was yesterday. How much more money would you have lost in the business district if you had a power outage that lasted an hour and a half or 2 hours on a Monday morning versus 41 minutes?
But I'm thinking Monday morning, you're not gonna lose that much. There's not that much traffic in downtown other than the coffee shop.
And the banks, and a plumber.
And the
All
newspaper.
the banks
And the newspaper.
Could just as easily have been Saturday morning, though.
That's true.
That's right.
That could be.
I don't
Squirrel,
know.
you don't
My,
read the
this is just my opinion. This smart grid is bleeding the city dry, and I don't think it's worth the money it's costing us. You still have, as you keep telling me in the last 2 meetings, we don't have all of them installed. We don't have water installed. According to one report, we started this in 2014. When is it going to be finished?
Well, if you
I was
go
at a
back,
meeting in St. Louis that says when it comes to this computerized stuff, don't ever purchase it because it updates daily. So daily, are we going to be feeding the system?
we started the project with a grant for the electric meters only. That's all it was for. The city's funds totally were used for the water and the gas. The U.S. government picked up half of the electric. The electric was put in first because the other meters report to the electric. So until all the electric meters was out there, it did not do any good to put in water and gas. We put the electric in. We had problems, as this council is we're aware of. We held off on the water and the gas until those problems looked like they was getting better. Then we put in a few routes of water and gas to make sure they worked before we installed any more. That's why they're not all in, is we chose to wait.
Well, my point is, though, if this started in 2014, I understand we got a grant, but I thought it was a matching grant. We had to come up with the matching grant of this $1 million that we got. And it's just for water, or I mean, just for electric?
The grant
And you
was just for electric.
Okay, now you keep telling me you have people out there on foot reading meters.
Yes, we do.
When is that going to quit? When are we going to stop paying those individuals?
Well, right now, we're trying to get the electric to bill through the same routine that the water and gas is now billing through. We took out USSI, which was the middle person. Kathy's people are putting in the electric numbers into the system now to get it where we don't have to pull directly from USSI, we can go straight to the source of Tantalus. I think she's about half done, roughly, with that. All the meters right now, this week and last week, is all over 90% reporting. All 3 systems. That's where we're at.
And that is strictly the electrical? It's
No,
not-
that is the
it
gas and the
includes
water that's also installed to it.
Well,
I
to
think
me,
there's 8 routes installed, is that correct? There's
I'm
8
afraid it's
routes.
going to end up being a money hog to the citizens of Fulton. That's my only concern.
I understand. I was just pointing out tonight of one of the benefits of the system that we don't talk
For
about
the
enough.
electrical, it was fantastic.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I think we actually started this in about 2009, 2010, somewhere in that time frame. And we've been working through the technology, and it's been a challenge for us. And, you know, earlier this year and even tonight when I was reading the packet, I was ready to pull the plug on this, but it sounds like we're still making inroads and we're making progress and making it better. Whether we ever get to the point where we completely eliminate meter readers is, you know, I think immaterial. It still tells us the status of our system. I would really like to recommend that we put out a press release on yesterday's event so we can publicize the positives of it. I mean, there's been negatives, but it's like any new technology. It's hard to start with. So I think we're still making strides. We need to keep going that way. How much money is it really costing us now?
Well, I mean, you're going to have ongoing costs, folks. I mean, it is computer systems, and some of the servers got several years on them now.
Right.
Now, some of the systems you would have anyway. I mean, you're still going to have a billing system.
Right.
You're still going to have security systems to keep people from hacking into that billing system or that engineering system. So a lot of the security portion of it is going to be there whether you have it or not. I do think that you will still have meter reading at times. You will have rereads. We have them now. I think you'll still have some of those where if Kathy's folks don't feel comfortable sending out that bill from the reading they got electronically, our plans are we will send somebody out there to verify that we are billing you correctly. And I think that's what we all want to do. So to say you won't ever have a meter reader anywhere walking to check stuff that needs checked is a falsehood.
Is it time to ask for an audit on this, as to what it's costing us?
You can ask for whatever you want to ask.
I think I would like to see an audit on this to see where we're at.
Instead of causing money, you mean in-house audit?
I'm sorry?
In-house?
I just want to know how long is it going to take to get the whole thing operational? How many times is it going to break down? What's it going to cost to have it repaired? I feel like I'm feeding a dead horse. That's where I'm at.
Well,
And I'm not a technology expert, but that's just where I'm at.
Well, I don't think Daryl can, Mr. Dunlap can answer some of those, how many times it's gonna break down.
Well, nobody
But
can.
I look at what we have invested, he's got 8 routes in. He says he's got technology to the point where we can run all 3, so I know I was the one who said we give them to December. It's not quite December, but kind of like Councilman West, before we scratch this program, we went so far, and maybe we should give them more time to see if it really works, because right now, I look for it every day from my text message to see how much utilities I used overnight. I kind of enjoy it myself, but now if we get water and gas on, either make my heart thump or do something before I get my bill. But anyhow, at least I know what I'm looking at towards the end of the month. Have you tried getting your electric on there? Do you like it?
Why do I care? I have level billing.
But you still know what you use it.
If you-
It tells that on my monthly statement.
If you start having a water leak, you might see it before you get the bill. I mean, we've seen that happen. The other thing I've talked to Ms. Hochschlag about before is once we get this up and running, we might be able to shorten the billing cycle to where we're getting, right now we take readings, near the middle of 1 month. We put the billing out on the first of the month, and we get paid the middle of the next month. So there's a lot of time in there that we're losing. And eventually, I'm thinking we're going to shorten that time frame up. You know, we get closer to the first of the month to take the reading, and then we send the bill out, we're getting paid in a half a month instead of a month. You know, I think we might be able to get to that point eventually, I don't know when, but, you know, and we won't do it all drastically all at once, I would hope, but, you know.
And Mr. Dunlap, do I understand the utility board is pleased with the progress of the smart grid? Is that kind of what I
don't know
read
if I
into
would
the
say-
minutes, that they are satisfied? Maybe not pleased, nobody's ever pleased
They're
with
wanting
anything.
it to work.
But they're satisfied with the progress that we're making, they're satisfied with the
Mr. Vaughn
steps
sits
that
in
we're
those
taking.
meetings.
I mean, that's what I read in the minutes. It doesn't seem to
I
be.
think they have, I think Darrell said it, you know, the same. They understand that when we took this project on, that it was strictly electric. And they understand that the system that we started with was, had a lot of flaws in it. The company took responsibility. They picked up a lot of the time for us that when the meter readers went out to switch the meters, the company reimbursed the city for that. They furnished some meters that were bad, refurnished them, that the city didn't have to pay for. So saying it's costing us and costing us is a little bit out there. It has cost us some because we have decided to upgrade some stuff ourselves, which we figured that we'd benefit from in the future. The utility board, they'd like to see it get done. They also understand that the gas and the water wasn't part of that contract. We as a city and as a council decided to purchase them meters and have them installed, which the city paid for, and our utility people are installing them. But until they're all in and done, I'm kind of like Councilman Moore. There's no way Darrell can give us 100% answer when it's going to be completely complete, but I think they've done as good a job as possible on a bad situation, but it's turned around and we're headed in the right way, I think.
Well, I might add that in the final outcome for citizens or people in a different generation, me, because I don't tweet and what all that does, Snapchat, but citizens that do for the younger generation will love the fact that they can go to California and adjust their temperature in their home or something if we do get it all going, or connect with the city and say, can you turn this down that as it started out to be, so I guess it'll still be that. So I think in the future it might be a drawing card to our utility service.
And don't get me wrong, I'm frustrated with this, and I think there's a lot of frustration at the U board, city council, and with the staff but I think maybe we were naive when we first started this on how new this technology was and how much we were going to have to evolve with it. And to me, I've seen a lot of progress in the last 6 months, very positive progress. So I don't think it's time to cut bait at this point.
Yes, my point is I would expect the utility board to bring forth any type of significant concern to the council.
Well,
I'm not
perhaps
sure.
it should be better explained maybe in a news article, so that I can stop getting these calls complaining about this thing.
Okay, very good. We will, I think this is an ever-evolving, every month type thing. We will keep this on the agenda and give you an update on a monthly basis where we are. Again, I think all your comments have been valid and shows concern. When we have our annual audit, we can ask the auditors to look at that more specifically, what the costs are. And anyway, so all those things are good. So we will keep this on the agenda and we'll continue the dialogue. And again, thank you, Darrell.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you, Darrell.
Okay, let's move on to new business. And I think Clay has some guests with us this evening. I'll let you introduce them.
Thank you, Mayor. Several weeks ago, I gave the council a packet that was basically a summary of what we've done through phase one of the baseball complex and the community center complex projects. The first couple of pages were the Parks and Rec Department summary. The thicker packet was the summary put together by SAP Design. They're here tonight. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask them to come up and give a verbal summary of what's in this packet and maybe answer some of your questions. But before I do that, I want to highlight a few points. Going into this, we had several questions. You know, we knew we had a lot of information, but there's a lot of information that we still wanted. The big question we had was, are these facilities going to make money, or are we going to lose money? And I think what the consultants did, they put together an operational analysis, and on the community center side of it, they came up with a cost recovery estimate of 98 to 104%. So that means if we program it right, if we manage it correctly, there's a very good chance that we'll break even, maybe make a little bit of money. On the baseball side of it, they came up with a cost recovery estimate of about 115 to 118%. So if we manage that correctly, if we market that correctly, very good chance we can make some money on a baseball softball complex. Second question we had was, how much money do we have to spend? We took a look at these operation numbers. We set aside a little bit of money for minor park improvements, playground improvements, shelter improvements, things like that. And I think what we would feel comfortable recommending at some point to the council is that we could possibly spend $6 to $7 million on one or both of these projects. I think the challenge we have right now is trying to find the right design, an adequate facility that fits within those budgets. I think we still need to look at, do we want to do both projects? Do we want to go with one project or the other? And if so, which one? I think those are discussions that we still need to have. But I think we're making progress, but we feel like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to get those answers. So hopefully tonight we'll give you guys some more information. But I think it's an ongoing process that we're not ready to ask for a recommendation or ask for an approval on anything just yet. But with that, I'll turn it over to Michael Sapp with Sapp Design, and he has several other consultants with him, and I'll let him introduce those folks.
Thank you, Clay, Mayor, members of council, and administration. Our team appreciates the opportunity to visit with you tonight and be here as long as you need us to discuss this. I asked Clay if we could have an hour, and he said, how about 15 minutes? So I'll let you be the determinant for how long we're here, but we're more than happy to stay as long as necessary to answer any of your questions. We wanted to really just maybe hit some of the key highlights that's in your packet and then see what questions you may have. As Clay said, we have been working on this for some time, and he did indicate some of the key areas. I might just give a reflection back to after our team was selected. I think there were some wise decisions made by city leadership and through our discussions that before you simply just dive into designing baseball fields and a community center, there was really this phase one level of services that needed to be conducted, which was an analytical process of looking at 6 key factors. And those 6 key factors then would be the driving force or the roadmap, if you will, to tell the city, and then hence us as your consultants, of how to move forward with actual design and then ultimately construction of the projects. So this phase one scope of services or analysis included, number one, a market analysis. And that market analysis was to identify recreational trends specific to your area. Now, when you selected us and ultimately hired us, there were some programmatic needs already determined that were provided to us. And so our experts who are here tonight, and they'll be speaking here in a moment, took that information and then also conducted through their expertise and what they do nationally across the country and customized that study for the Fulton community area to see what it might say and see if it said, yes, the program you've put out there is the right approach, or is there some modifications necessary or not. So that was number one. So that market study analysis was conducted. Number two, then, once we got past that, was to look at an operational analysis. So based on a program relative of a market analysis, what would an operational analysis be for that program? And so that was done as step two. And then after step two was done, number three was looking at what would be the minimum amenities needed to meet the goals of the Park and Recreation Department. And number three, we worked to develop an operational business plan, or if you will, sources of revenue, income to help support the facilities and the proposed program, preferred programs. And then the fifth was then to look at construction cost estimates for those proposed programs and facilities. And then finally to look at some concept designs that would reflect that. And so we went through those 6 steps. That's where we are this evening. That's been put in a summary document that you have. I'm going to let each of the other consultants kind of hit maybe some highlights from their areas of expertise and the work that they conducted. The folks that are here with us tonight are Darren Barr of Ballard King, and he'll be talking about the market analysis, operation, and business plans. And then Vance Repka of VSR Designs, who mainly focused on the ball field complex and design and analysis. And then, of course, our team from SAP Design, which focused really mainly on the community recreation complex. So I think it'd be appropriate, unless you want to go immediately into Q&A, is to let Darren just maybe hit some key highlights on how we started this study and what it determined for us.
Some of us bring the computer, others bring the paper. Sorry, I'm like that. Thank you for having us tonight. When we go ahead and we look at the market analysis, I think one of the things that is important for you guys to know is that the participation numbers that we provide you, they're produced by the National Sporting Goods Association on an annual basis. However, we go ahead and we take the age distribution within your community, the median household income in the region of the country that you're in, and adjust those numbers so that it's specific to you. So we're not going ahead and we're saying, for instance, I was in Claremont, California last week. We're not saying the demographics of Claremont, California are determining the participation rates that are happening here within the city of Fulton and within your service areas. So I think that's an important thing to consider when you look at that. We also try and take a look at what some of the local trends and what some of the national trends are as we look at participation. Facilities like this, depending upon the components that you put in them, are sports, recreation, activities, wellness, those types of things. Depending upon classrooms, depending upon meeting rooms, those types of things. Another area where you're seeing these facilities fill a gap within communities is in the arts. So going ahead, and we also can provide some information from the National Endowment of the Arts to talk about some of that type of programming that could take place in your facility. So we really tried to look at it from a broad perspective. One of the things that we also did in the market assessment is going ahead and we looked at Fulton proper, but we also looked at, I believe it was a 15-minute drive time from a center point in Fulton. We understand that facilities like this are going to go ahead and draw from a larger regional a larger area in terms of a daily user or a weekly user. For the field study, we looked at a significantly greater area, not from a perspective of people are going ahead and traveling all the way from St. Louis or Quincy or those areas on a daily basis to use a field complex. However, when you go ahead and when you look at the tournaments and the type of regional events you could host in a facility like this, it is reasonable to think that people would drive 2 to 2.5 hours to use the facility. All of that information goes ahead and helps us provide recommendations for what should be in a facility. As Michael mentioned, we already had some facility components, so it allowed us to go ahead and validate some of those components. It allowed us to go ahead and take a look at those components and say there's some duplication, so we could go ahead and consolidate and multi-use. The other thing that it does is those the demographic information, the participation statistics, then allow us to go ahead and build our operations plan. I joke with people, I'm not joking with you when I say this, but I joke with people that I can make most any facility pencil out on paper or show 100% cost recovery. The reality is that I want to make sure that whatever I provided you in this report was based on the demographics and the participation numbers that you had. Most of the facility options that we looked at would pencil out as it relates to operations. Maybe not necessarily in year 1, but definitely by the time you got to year 3, you were seeing close to 100% cost recovery. The biggest advantage you as a community have to make that happen is utilities, and that you're self-operated, and that's not being charged back to the individual operations. If you had gone ahead and if that had been included in the operations plans, you would have been lucky in many cases to be at the 75 to 80% cost recovery rate. The operations plans in some areas are quasi-aggressive. It does make the current recreation staff adjust how they might handle the business on a day-to-day basis. In the instance of having a facility that goes ahead and that would have a membership component, that's a new, I don't want to say new business, it's a new endeavor for the current recreation staff, which it's not insurmountable. It's just going to go ahead and require some change in terms of the day-to-day of how we go ahead and how we accomplish those things. I'm not sure, I could talk about this for an hour. I can already tell the coffee's wearing off a little bit. So I guess from an operational perspective or a facility perspective, what questions might you have?
The utilization up to like year 3 that you talked about, is that a if we build it they will come type of opportunity there? Is that what you're thinking, is that utilization would come as we offer more programs, as we do more things and people will use it?
Yeah.
Or why are you thinking something different for year 1 versus year 3?
That's a great question. When you go ahead and what we have found in going ahead and creating these plans and then coming back from our experience as operators and talking with current operators at facilities, you're not really going to go ahead and hit your normal until years 3, 4, and 5. It's irresponsible of me, and Clay would not be happy with me if I went ahead and said you can do all of this programming from year 1. Year 1 and 2, year 1 is really going ahead and figuring out how the building operates and going ahead and getting a level of programming in there that illustrates that the building is being used and being demanded by the community. But it also goes ahead and while Michael and I can sit down and talk about and Clay talk about how a facility should be used or how we expect the residents and the users to use the facility, it's going to take time for them to figure out all the various uses. So if we go ahead and if we open year 1 and have the facility programmed from the time the building opens until the time the building closes, we're not allowing the members, the daily drop-in users, the residents to kind of figure out how they want to use the facility. That's always an approach you could take. It's not one that I would recommend, but that's a lot of the reason why you go ahead and you see that growth for the first 2 to 3 years, and then it begins to taper off. I don't know if that...
Yep. And then does some of your analysis, does it include some of that utility cost associated with it? Right. I mean, even though we're a self-utility, there's still a cost that's going to be involved in that we need to understand.
Sure. Right now, we don't have a utility cost factored into the overall operation plan. Again, that's something that before you go ahead and receive a final report, I want to be able to take all my numbers and dump into a document. Right now, we've just been playing with them in Excel between the consulting team and Clay and myself. But that's something that if there's whether it's an occupancy or whether that's a dollar amount that's below the line. Typically, and everybody hold on, this is the gasp moment. Typically, facilities like this, depending upon the area of the country we're in, we're seeing range from $2.75 a square foot all the way up to $4.50 per square foot for electric, gas, water, sewer, those types of things. Just depends upon the components that you have in there. That's why I'm saying that's a huge advantage that you have when it goes to taking a look at, can this facility be 100% cost recovery?
So with your analysis, which facility did you decide we should build first?
That was something that was discussed as a consulting group. It really is not our decision to make. I know that's a very politically correct response, but it really comes back to the facility that you feel like would go ahead and have the greatest impact on the citizens of Fulton. From my perspective and understanding that, you know, the facilities are being funded with the sales tax and the construction. If you look at the two facility types that you have, you will have some economic impact from a community center depending upon what type of outside special events you might have in that facility, whether it's a wrestling tournament, whether it's a youth basketball tournament. But by design, the facility that's going to go ahead and have the bigger economic impact is going to be the softball baseball complex. But in the end, it really comes to the people in front of me to decide, you know, which direction you should go ahead and take if there is a choice to be made. Obviously with input from Clay and his staff and what they're hearing on a daily basis from their program participants and the folks they interface with.
So then Clay's the one that could tell us which would, to getting started and get something to show where our money is going, you're going to be able to tell us that? Should we go with the baseball? To me, this community is very sports-minded, and I think they're going to support whatever we come up with.
Sure.
But
You're fine. If you ask me to decide between one or the other, it's very difficult right now. I see a need for both. I see different needs throughout the community for both. I don't think I'm ready to say give up on one or the other yet. Let's keep moving forward. Try to get both of them done. Maybe at some point we decide we need to go with one before the other, or you know, that decision I think has to come later. But I think if we do decide to go baseball complex or community center, I think we owe it to the community to put it out there and let them have some input on it. It won't be just a decision that I make personally. The administration will be involved in it. We need to have the community involved in it, and you guys will be involved in it also.
we need education from the gentlemen that you have here tonight. But like I said, this is a sports-minded community, and my personal opinion, let's just get on with it. Let's do it.
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah.
Anybody else voting that way?
Yeah.
No.
Get the money, we're there.
Was there any other questions for me? And then I'll let Vance come up and talk a little bit about the sports fields and those types of things.
Okay.
Thank you guys for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Vance Repka. I'm a landscape architect, and I design outdoor sports facilities. I like your sports attitude. A little self-serving, I understand. But anyway, we have been in the process with Clay and the staff and our consulting team to come up with designs for the facility. I think you understand where the facility is. You've got your packets on Tennyson. So we're utilizing the fire station entry. We've got potential for a future connection to the theaters and to the bowling alley so that the full experience of tournaments gets enhanced, and we sort of do the Disney mousetrap where you feed them through where people are going to buy. So that all works very well. We've been working on a number of different designs and will continue to do so. Our field sizes are based on really providing a lot of variety and a lot of potential sizes for different kids' ages. And so we are not putting in just a bunch of little fields that only up to 10-year-old kids can play. So, so we've got quite an option from a facility size standpoint, and I think that as Clay alluded to earlier, it can really be one of those built, somebody said, if you build it, they will come. You have to market it and you have to run it well. And I think we've talked about this in the past. And, you know, good food and good service and that sort of thing goes a long way. And so, and there are opportunities. Baseball is starting to make a little bit of a rebound in its participation. And I think that teams are always looking for a good place to go out of town and have a tournament. this is the one part of the facility that, or the one part of the design that really brings in outside money, because you're really trying to bring in people. Not only, I think our numbers are primarily based on, direct revenues of what go, what we get for gate fee and some of that sort of thing, but we also have the economic development that's not really taken part of, hotel rooms, restaurant revenues, and that sort of thing. And so that economic development piece really doesn't come across in those spreadsheets of paying off, whether it's, whether we can, how much we're retiring as far as operation covering that debt, so, or covering our operations. So kind of a simple rundown there. Do you have any questions about what we were proposing?
From a design aspect for the ball fields, is there any opportunity there where we only build half of the design the first year and build the other half as volumes come, or is it's going to cost what it's going to cost whether you do it all at once or do it different?
Well, it won't, I mean, the cost is whatever we build. You've got to grade the whole site to start with. You've got to bring utilities in. You're going to encumber a lot of those initial costs, regardless of, even if we only build one field. The problem is you really can't generate much revenue on a 2 or 3 field complex, because you've got to be able to have enough teams in. The other teams want to know who's playing too, and so you want to be able to have, a 16, 24 team tournament, and that's what brings more teams in. But if you only have 2 fields, you can try to limp through, but it's not very impressive. You don't get as much repeat use of those facilities. It's probably a 5 or 6 is really what you need to really get that going. So, did that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the direction I assumed we needed to go.
Right. Whenever it comes to construction, the longer you put it off, the higher the price is going to go. I don't know if that's a fact, but that's what I have seen. I could build a house today for $100,000, wait a year, and it's going to be $150,000. So
That's a given.
that's why I would like to, let's just get moving.
So-
The longer we put it off, the more it's going to cost us.
So in all your analysis, Mr. Sapp said 2-hour drive. So how far did you go out to say that people would come to Fulton for tournament play?
How far out is our
When we went ahead and we looked at it from a baseball perspective, we looked at what a 2-hour drive time was, and it kind of discombobulated the shape, so we went ahead and we extended it a little further north and along the main corridor. So it stretches all the way almost to Kansas City and to St. Louis, and then bulges a little bit north and then a little bit down towards Springfield, which is really pretty reasonable when you start talking about that. In comparison, when we looked at a primary service area for the community center and indoor spaces, we went ahead and looked at essentially a 15-minute drive time, understanding that there was, since the sales tax doesn't go ahead and apply to residents and non-residents, we looked at that drive time. That's not to say as you go ahead and as you move to the future, you could have a differential, so you have a resident rate and a non-resident rate. Right now, all of the operational numbers are built off that single payer rate. So I'm not sure if that's what you're...
Well, so is Clay responsible for the marketing of this complex to draw in, or
I think
how do you market?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. When we went ahead and we looked at the different options, indoor facility-wise, option 1 and option 2, you could go ahead and you could manage it with current staff levels. But yeah, there's an element of programming or marketing, which they're already doing. By the time you got to option 3, you were having to add some full-time staff. Specific to the ball field complex, there was a full-time staff member that was added into that operational plan that would go ahead and that would manage that complex. That's typically what you find those folks doing. Their hardest years are the first 5, going ahead and reaching out and making those contacts and making things established. That also goes ahead and has a pretty big impact on what your year 1 operation is like as well. Specifically with that facility component, you would want to go ahead and almost as early as you started construction, consider bringing that staff member on board so that they could be in sync with the construction process and begin to time things out. So as soon as those fields were playable, they had tournaments and other things that they could shift into that location.
What is a turnkey timeline for a ball field complex?
In terms of design and construction?
Yeah. When could we play our first game?
Well, we're probably looking at, I have to look at everybody here because we've got, I mean, we do have.
Is it a 2-year?
Well, I don't know that it would be 2-year. It kind of depends on how fast we can get through, start the design. I mean, if we start right away, we can get things rolling and under construction next year so that, yeah, you would be.
So we could play ball in 2020 if we
Yes.
approved it in the next 6 months,
Yeah.
sort of thing?
Yeah, I believe so.
See, this would help our golf course, this would help our airport. What more could you ask for? We're right in the middle of the state.
She didn't have to talk.
I have a small question, just because somebody's going to ask. Columbia is revamping their multi-field complex. Is that going to have any kind of an effect on this facility?
You mean because of competition, essentially? You know, I mean, I suppose that's part of the mix. I think that people, I will say, speaking personally, from having 2 sons that played tournament ball all the way through college, that nobody really wants to go to the same place more than once a year. So there needs to be a number of different complexes. So while I think it may have a slight impact, it's probably not going to be much of an impact. Because again, depending on how you run the tournament and how popular it becomes, once you start sort of throwing in for state tournaments for the different organizations at the end of the year, that sort of thing, I think you could probably, I mean, I will say it should be competitive so that you're competitive and you try to beat them out all the time. But as part of a public meeting, I don't want to, you know, throw the
Well,
gauntlet.
I just had to ask because somebody's going to ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, and at the same time, you know, some of the facilities that are in Columbia now are falling a little bit in disrepair. And so, and a lot of those older facilities just don't have everything in one spot like they do now. So you'll have 2 or 3 fields of one size and you go to a different complex. And so, like you saw Columbia build all of their fields in one location. That's what we're trying to do. So all the way circle back to the other question of could we do 2 or 3 fields. Technically, you could do 2 or 3 fields and then use some of your existing fields and try to cobble something together. But again, that's not the trend. And that's not an easy thing for somebody to come in from out of town and say, what field are we on at 3 o'clock and versus what field are we on at 7? Do we have to travel back and forth? And so having it all in one complex really becomes a plus for that sort of thing. And so,
Well, and I know a lot of these details are being discussed at the park board and when a lot of these details are done, but at the same time, if we're looking at, well, we're gonna have different size fields for the different age groups, you know, that's not always easy to put in one complex, because now you're trying to do too much in one space. So it's that finding that magic balance.
Right. Yeah, and it is a balance. And again, like Darren said about your, you know, operations of the community center, it'll take a little bit of time to kind of figure it all out and know what works and doesn't work and what groups to bring in and what groups you don't want in. You know, there will be groups you don't want to come back. They may be revenue, but they may be more trouble and complain all the time and not be worth the trouble. But and some you're really going to want to draw from St. Louis and Springfield and in Kansas City because they're going to then stay the night. And so that's where your real economic development comes in. People just coming over from Columbia are just basically commuters. Not that you don't want people to come from Columbia, since this is a public meeting. But, you know, it's that sort of thing. You really do want those people to come in from out of town and spend their dollars here.
So do you currently have a facility in this area that you personally designed, that you look at?
Well, as a rec facility, no, I did the
No,
Fulton
as
High
a-
School field,
Yeah.
the high school baseball field, I did, I can't remember when that was, probably 6 or 7 years ago. In Columbia, I did all of the outdoor fields at the new Battle High School. And that's probably between the two of those, that's a pretty good rendition of what we would do here. Netting for backstops, you know, not just all chain link fences around the outfields. And that's probably the way the fields will look.
So the facility that you would build for us would be something that would be modern to compete, so Clay could draw those people and try us out at least the
Correct,
first
yeah, and we've got it laid out in ways that we've got some playgrounds for siblings, we've got areas for presentation for awards at the end, central locations of, you know, restrooms, so it's convenient for everybody that's using all of the fields that are spread out. And then there's future growth for, you know, some indoor facilities if we want to do, you know, lessons and that sort of thing. As the club market, you know, sort of grows, you'll need those indoor facilities for the winter that would be turfed and have some cages and things inside, as well as cages outside that people can come and, you know, potentially we could do coin operated, so that you arrange these things in a way so that it's easy to use that sort of off tournament time, kind of keep them separate so they don't clutter your entrance, that sort of thing. But at the same time, we keep everybody centrally located so that it's easy to take a gate when they come in for entry fees. You know, there's a number of those things that we consider as we lay these facilities out.
Thank you.
Sir?
Very good, thank you.
I'm looking at this layout on page 13 of the ball field. The only concern I see is the parking, and it's one of the complaints I have about Rainbow over in Columbia is the parking is way away and a lot of people have to walk, which isn't a big deal for someone my age, but you know, when you start getting grandparents and you know, other things. So I would like to see some parking more integral to it, but plus I don't know that I'd want to park where left field home runs might hit you, but.
Well, and you know, honestly, one of the things that we see, and again, with that parking all on one side, we've got we make it easy for operations.
Right.
So we have one person out there that takes the gate as they come in.
I understand.
If we put parking on both sides, now there's two things at play here. This is not just an easy flat site. So we had to take a pretty hilly site and kind of flatten it out to put these ball fields in. What I see a lot of times is, now Clay's probably going to punch me at our next meeting, but is to have like a golf cart come out for those that.
Yeah, and I've seen that too.
Yeah, that have a hard time.
So that's something you had to deal with.
Right, and it's,
Arrange for.
because you really can't get them real close to a ball field like this without being in jeopardy of a foul ball or a home run. And it is interesting, some of the way these fields lay out, you try to typically you put a, you know, accessible space as close to the door and make it as easy as possible. And some of these ball fields, that is the prime foul ball area. And so it's sort of the opposite of really what you want to accomplish. You've put someone like that in the hazard area. So it's kind of an operational problem more than anything. Sorry, Clay. But it does. And to be honest with you, when you get people that drive those carts, if they are pleasant, that becomes part of the experience, especially for those that come in from out of town, to have a pleasant person to talk to and to chat with. That's all you want for grandma and grandpas.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I would also suggest, here I'm going to put the plug in, using Native American plant or Native Missouri plants as much as you can. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that around the perimeter, but not on the field itself. We want nicely mown lawn. So
I understand.
You bet.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And my plug is, we need a cross-country route that goes around the complex, so we can use it for cross-country teams.
Okay.
We got all kinds of ideas, don't we? Gotta get the money.
I might remind the council that, again,
That's up to me.
let's let them do their overview, and
Yeah,
there's
that's
going to be
fine.
many more meetings,
That's awesome.
I'm sure, on when we get to the design.
Yes,
Go ahead.
So the other piece of this, to bring closure to the study, is the community recreation building. So as we went through the analysis and as Vance went through the ball fields, and his costs started maturing, and as we were bringing the building along, we wanted to look at some options that said, what is the opportunity to do everything? And we were given a budget number that we were told to use as our benchmark. So using that bench number, then we knew that we had to look at options relative to the building, because the ball fields, quite frankly, are what they are. I think Vance did a good job of explaining, because of tournament play and revenue sources and such, you know, it's 5 or 6 fields. The idea of trying to back down to 1 field or 2 field doesn't make a lot of sense for that type of program. So when we have something that seems to be pretty given, if you are to pursue that ball field complex, whether it's 5 or 6, then that gives us a number then that we look at what's remaining then to analyze the building or the community center. So that is the reason really for option 1 and 2, and your report is saying, well, based on those numbers, then what do we have to work with to try to create those recreation programs for the community center? So those first two studies looked at building sizes from just shy of 20,000 square foot to about 32,000 square foot. And you'll see in the report the cost parameters for those two were ranging about 4.3 to 6.3 million between those two. So again, we were trying to say, well, if we want to buy everything day one, then we've got to be looking at building structures probably in this square footage size based on some of the cost parameters that we were using. And in that report, you'll see that the cost parameters we were using was $175 a square foot, and then adding a factor of 25% to that to pay for all your other costs. So one of the things that we always try to do with our clients is to make sure that they understand construction cost plus other cost. You have to add those two together to compare to your budget. So that's the reason for that breakdown. So when we use that particular cost factor, then it drives the cost of those building components. Now, I know from Parks Department's notes and what they put in the report that their preference is not option 1 or 2. They don't feel that it meets the programmatic requirements that they would like to offer to the community. And because of that, we did look at option 3, and I know Parks and Rec also had one of their options in addition to option 3. But option 3 was looking at almost 53,000 square foot of building proper to accommodate hopefully everything that would be the desire of the Park and Recreation to offer back to the community. And so that was the upper end of the cost scale, which was that $11.6 million range. So those are the 3 analyses that we did related to the building. Now, some discussions we've had since with Clay is really related to this $175 a square foot. Is that a real number? Because when you use that number, it is a determinant that backs into a building size that then backs into what programs can you offer within that building size. And so we did reach out to an area contractor to look at our cost parameters. One that's worked with the city here before is working on a project of similar nature that's recreation. It's actually private money, not public dollars. And they were saying maybe it could be a little bit less. It wasn't drastic, but it was less than our numbers. You know, about $163 a square foot was their perception of what might be a good budget number. So really where we're at right now in working on the building side is to work with Clay and the Parks folks to see where we can reconcile a preferred program to offer to the community for the community recreation within a budget parameter that's been established, that we've been asked to adhere to. And so option 1 and 2 does that monetarily, but programmatically it does not. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Real quick. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much
you very
for your
much.
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have anything you want to add, Clay?
Yeah, I'll be real brief because I think we went over our 15 minutes. Just on the community center side of it, I just want to reiterate that, you know, our goal for this project is to develop a multi-purpose facility that can be used for a lot of different activities at one time. Okay, we could go with a smaller building and program it so we can have a lot of activities, but we want a building that's going to have things going on in several different places in the building. At some point, we may come to you and say, look, we cannot provide a building to this community within this budget that's going to meet the needs of the community. I hope we don't have to do that. But we're talking about big construction numbers. We're talking about big wants and needs. So we're going to try to come to a balance. You know, we're going to look at things like, can we design it so it's smaller? Can we design it so we can afford it? We're also going to look at things like, what can the city do to provide some labor? What kind of work can we do to offset some of the costs? So again, that's kind of a slow process, but that's kind of the process we're working through, and we're working towards that end goal that I talked about. So we don't have anything to lay in front of you and say this is the perfect plan, this is what we want to do, but I just want to give everybody an update on where we're at and let you know that we're still working towards those goals.
Clay,
Yes, sir.
some of these buildings they're building, proposing buildings, can they use as storm shelters?
We've had some of those discussions. We've talked about, you know, possibly applying for a FEMA grant
Right.
and getting some of that funding. That's a long process also. So, yes, we are having those discussions.
I mean, after all, we are in Tornado Alley.
It is, and we don't have a basement in it yet. Could that be a possibility? You know, maybe we bring it to the council, and the council says, we don't want this big basketball gym, we want a basement component. You know, so those are things we have to keep talking about and find out what's the best for the community.
Just to maybe answer your question.
You bet.
Those are things that we've talked about, and, you know, if you could get a FEMA grant, that would be wonderful. We've done, probably 3 dozen FEMA structures across the state of Missouri, and every client that we've had that's been able to get a grant has been very appreciative of that. Not only what it offers as a safe and secure structure, but also the government money that comes in to help build that.
Well, you're talking a baseball complex out here that has no place for shelter.
Yeah, well, to continue that, what we're finding in today's construction dollars, it doesn't take much more to do a hardened structure, which isn't necessarily a FEMA 361 rated structure, which is a higher level of design. But a hardened structure can meet certain storm events. And with hardened structures, you can do that pretty close within general construction cost per square foot without having a major impact on the overall budget. So we would certainly encourage reviewing that as we go further into design and talking about that, because even at the ball field complex or the building, the community center building, we have great opportunity for reasonable size spaces that will be programmed for recreation events that could be easily hardened.
Well, and with the 2016 and even the
Well,
2018
that's
building
correct.
requirements, depending on what you're building, you have to have a
Yeah,
FEMA.
International Building Code.
You
Yeah,
have to have
depending
a
on
FEMA
what,
structure.
depending on what the city adopts and uses for that, yeah.
So, I mean, if we have to do it, and we can get them to pay for it, then
Yeah, that's a win-win, absolutely.
Clay, has there been any discussions with the 2 colleges, college and university in town about, you know, if they'd want to do any, if they have any needs or any, they would want to, I mean, I don't think the locations aren't going to work real well for them, but.
No, but
Yeah, and we haven't had any discussions since prior to the 2016 ballot.
Yeah.
The mayor and I had some brief conversations about maybe revisiting those discussions and seeing if there is some interest. So that's probably something we'll look at going forward and see if they might be interested.
You look at the link they built down in Jefferson City with the city
With the
and
university.
with Lincoln University.
Yeah.
We were just down, several of us were just down there last week.
Last week?
Yeah, and I think
Last Wednesday, I think.
I think that's an option that we can continue to explore.
Okay.
We're good.
Thank you, Clay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And get some Anheuser-Busch money.
Let's move on to item B, which is the approval or denial of a taxi cab application from Paul Marcy, our DBA Star Taxi, which we had a public hearing on earlier.
Thank you.
Do I have any motion on this?
I make a motion to approve Mr. Dorsey's application.
Second.
Second.
Second that.
We're good. I have a motion and a second to approve this application. Is there any further discussion of this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. Application is approved.
Welcome to town.
Welcome to
You'll
town.
check with
Welcome
city
back.
clerk and
Welcome
they'll
back.
take care of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Very good.
request a break.
At this point, on our agenda, we'll consider any matter that you may have that is not already on the agenda for the
Can I have a
night's
request
meeting.
for a break, Mayor?
Okay, sure. Well, let's take a 5-minute break. Be back about 8:05.
Someone said to go to work.
8:05. Thanks. Good, let's reconvene and continue on with our business. Let's see where the council concerns. Let's start, Mr. Shilen, do you have anything this evening?
Negative.
Thank you, Mr. West.
Just a question, I noticed in the, oh heck, hang a minute. The Human Rights Commission, they're going to go to a conference over in Columbia, I think it is, possibly a state conference. Do we cover their expenses for their travel? Okay, thank you. I'm getting a yes from the Madam Clerk. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Recluse.
Not tonight, sir.
Mr. Stone.
I had a couple of citizens that saw the report where we're doing the construction on the roads and the sidewalks and all of that, and the sewer upgrades, and they're just hopeful that all the planning is going to be coordinated so that we're not digging up streets that we just laid like we've done a couple of times in the past. And then also a request that as we're doing those sidewalks that are included in the big projects, on 4th Street as well as up and down the business loop, that if there is any opportunity for additional sidewalking to be improved around the town, there's, many different little neighborhoods that have city sidewalks on them that need lots of attention also. And then just want to take an opportunity to publicly thank my beautiful bride for 25 years of marriage today. Thank you.
That's great.
And you came here?
Yeah.
She said.
She sent me here.
She's sitting there. I'll stay home, put my feet up.
That's how you stay married.
Exactly. Do as you're told.
Mrs. Gray?
No, I've already spoken to Les about my two concerns, so we're
Thank
okay.
you. Mr. Collins?
I'm fine there.
Mr. Moore?
Oh, gosh, Mayor, you would do that to me. Actually, I called Mr. Hudson, and I probably called the wrong department head, but he said he would pass it on. Friday afternoon, I was downtown in the city of Fulton on the 5th Street side, at Brooklyn Pizza down to Nichols. And there was two elderly people who were coming up the sidewalk with walkers. And I had called Mr. Hudson and asked, is there something that we could do? How those sidewalks are uneven right on that side for people like that, about shaving them down or somehow. And he said he thought there could be. So he was going to pass it on. So I just wanted to put it out there. Maybe if someone else or in the engineer department of Kyle could maybe do something that I didn't say and replace them, but for senior citizens like that, we might make it easier because they had to pick up their walkers, so that it was uneven there.
Sure.
And my other one is just, you said remind you later in the year, and it's not, and it's probably a more benefit to less, that for in 2018, if we could talk about developing a new plan for weeds and abandoned houses and occupancy permits. I just didn't want that to get dropped out of from 2017.
Okay. Very good.
All right. That's all I had.
Yeah, Mr. Shiverdisher?
Yes, sir. I had a call from a person complaining they had rented a pavilion at one of our local parks, and they had issues with other people invading on their party. When they asked them to leave, they wouldn't leave. They also asked, one of them started lighting up a cigarette to smoke. They asked them not to smoke. They wouldn't stop. They called the police. I don't know if anything was taken care of because of that, but I'm just wondering, this isn't the first complaint I've had of this sort. Is there anything we can do to help the people who have reserved our pavilions to eliminate this being a problem?
Let us study that. Clay, you want to address it? It's actually the park side.
Yeah, all our pavilions are first come, first served, open to the public, just like all our parks are. If you want to reserve one, so it's just there for you, you can come by, pay the fee, fill out the reservation form. We tell all the people that reserve one that if someone's there when you get there, contact the police or ask them to leave, show them the reservation form. Basically, we've had suggestions, hey, put up a sign saying it's reserved. Then you got to devote some manpower to going around and putting up the reserve signs everywhere. And even if they're not going to listen to the police, or if they're not going to leave when they're asked to, they're probably not going to pay attention to a sign. So as much as we'd like to be able to control what the general public does, I mean, that's what it is. We reserve it. We reserve the shelter. We tell them, hey, if you're having trouble, ask them to leave, or contact the police for assistance. So if it's during the day, which it rarely is, if it's Monday through Friday during business hours, we'll send somebody out. But most of the rentals are in the evenings, weekends, things like that.
Yeah, I assume it was on a weekend.
Are the parks smoke-free?
That one is.
I don't believe by ordinance, no. We do have some no smoking signs, kind of a way to discourage people, but.
Well, let me ask you this question, because you are the park director. What about if we made an ordinance that you can, if you've asked and you disrespect the reserved people, you can be arrested, and you, instead of putting it out in the paper on the thing, just when the park rules put it on there if someone has it reserved and has a permit, you know, you only welcome everybody there.
Yeah, and I can do some research to see if other communities do something similar. You know, we have policies, we have rules and policies. You know, when you sign a reservation form, you're given a copy of those rules and policies. Again, it doesn't do anything to the person that's just there.
And it's a public park. I mean,
Yeah.
it's for the city.
It is.
When I've had similar experiences, and we've called the police department, they've dealt with it. But, I mean, it's unfortunate you have to get to that point, but, you know, they've always been very responsive and take care of the problem.
And I think most decent people, once you tell them, hey, we have it reserved, will leave and go other places. This individual, for whatever reason, he had 3 separate incidents, and it was unfortunate. You know, I spoke with him. You know, I apologize that he had the bad experience, but I don't know there's anything we could really do to prevent it.
Could refund.
Tell you what, let's let Clay do some talking with the chief, and he'll come back with some recommendations, and we can put it on a future agenda for discussion.
That's all I was asking.
I know
Thank
you're
you.
pretty busy, but
Because I don't think this is a situation we're
get
going
on
to solve.
Columbia or Jeff and see what their
I can.
policies are.
And a lot of, you know, and you probably don't want to hear this, but a lot of parks, city parks have park rangers. So that's a considerable expense, and you know, if you went down that road, but that would be someone that, you know, wouldn't pull away from the police force, someone that could patrol the parks during the weekends and the evenings and things like that. So that's an option, but again, that's an expensive option.
Clay, I got in on the tail end of this a couple of days ago, and I was told then that he had paid a fee.
Yes.
Did we refund that fee?
We did not.
Why not?
One, we didn't feel like we had done anything wrong. 2, he was able to have his event. You know, we felt like it was something that was out of our control, and our policy is typically not to give a refund in that situation.
Might be a good faith effort thing.
Yeah, that's
Good
what I
faith.
was
Well, that's, yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead with resolutions. We'll move on
I
here.
gotta go.
And like I say, we'll save that for the future. Okay. Our first resolution this evening is Resolution 3295, which has to do with the authorizing the mayor to sign on some tax credit agreements, which will be for the Callaway Arts Council and the Brick District Playhouse, and establishing an effective date. Councilman West, would you please present Resolution 3295 for consideration at tonight's meeting?
Sure. Resolution number 3295, a resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri, to sign all necessary documents relating to the tax credit agreement set forth by the Missouri Development Finance Board, the city of Fulton, Missouri, and the Callaway Arts Council, doing business as Brick District Playhouse, and establishing an effective date. I move for adoption of resolution number 3295 at tonight's council meeting.
Second.
Very good, thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 3295. Any further discussion of the motion?
My question is what, financially, how much of a credit are we giving them? They're not getting a sales tax or what?
All we're doing is administering this application. The funds are actually being established from the state of Missouri.
Okay,
The city has no money involved at all.
okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Not any further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Thank you. That resolution is adopted. Resolution 3296 is a resolution authorizing, again, signature entering into a contract with the Callaway County Emergency Operations Center for services for the 2018. Councilman Shiland, would you please present this for
A
consideration?
resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri to execute an agreement with the Callaway County Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, for public emergency communications operations services for the city of Fulton for the year of 2018. Move the resolution 3298 be voted on at tonight's meeting.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and second to adopt 3296 at tonight's meeting. Any further discussion of this motion?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Go ahead.
It's, I know that we pretty well have to do this thing, but it's still my understanding that we're having a super lot of trouble with getting calls.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
The two chiefs want to come forward and address that.
On a timely matter, anyway.
Yes, we've had some calls that's been delayed. I've addressed those calls with the dispatch center, and they're assuring us that it's not going to happen again. But we still do have some concerns there.
But we've been assured in the past.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Are our dispatchers not being trained properly? When you listen to that scanner, it's pathetic. Are they not? Who's ever dispatching the calls, receiving the calls, are they not being trained properly?
I think one of their problems there is turnover rate. What they're telling me is they're getting people trained, and then they're leaving. And then they have to start someone fresh again.
What is the reasons they're leaving?
Money?
Hours, money.
Hours. Hours.
County operations.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
it's
at
I'm
the
not
end
hours.
sure
of the
we
week,
can really comment on
Well, that's
personnel issues with the county.
that was kind of what we, not so much.
But yes, they do have a big turnover. Matter of fact, just last week, I had a discussion with presiding commissioner over this issue. Again, they're aware, doing what they can with the resources they have, outside of going into business ourselves, and we probably end up with the same kind of situation. Our best bet is to continue to work with the county and give them feedback. We get, quarterly reports from the EOC now on our times of our calls. I've reviewed those. There can be some improvement. Overall, majority of them, I think, fairly timely. There's always going to be that one exception, and who knows what happens in those situations. But at least communications happening between the chiefs and the EOC director, and they're getting feedback on what the problems are. Is that about right?
That is correct.
Okay.
We're working with the commissioners and trying to get things cleared up.
I also heard that it's also a problem with the reports, getting them. Instead of us getting them, that we have to, we will ask for them or go there and get them. Is that correct or not?
We get our times from them through Lotus Notes, and we haven't had any problems getting any times or reports from them.
Mr. Mayor, I understand that's an extremely high-stress job. It takes a special personality in order to do that. If I'm not mistaken, there are tests that you can administer to people to determine if their personality is suitable for that type of work. And that might be something the county might look into.
Okay, very good. We'll pass that on to Commissioner. Thank you. Okay. Are there any further questions on this resolution?
Any concerns, Chief Meyer, that you want to express to us before we vote on this resolution?
No, I think not anything that hasn't been expressed already. We've had some issues and we're working through those. I might say that I think Commissioner Junkerman has probably worked harder the last year trying to correct this situation than probably that I've seen since I've been here.
I remember he was here back in February presenting on this issue.
Very difficult situation that they have to deal with out there, and we're trying to work with them as well. And so
Is
I
there
think
age
Chief Kofeld has
qualifications?
worked as hard as anyone trying to correct that situation out there, and I think it I think it's getting better, and I think they're looking possibly for some new direction out there as well. So,
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, do they have age qualifications to be in that position?
What?
Is there age qualifications to be in that position? Can they be 18 or 30? Is there any? I know there's no discrimination.
I don't know what their qualifications are out there.
Okay.
So as time goes on, is he ever gonna update to where you can break your stats down into categories as you change equipment?
I don't think they can right now with their current system that they're using. They would have to update their, from what I'm understanding, they'll have to update their CAD system.
So when
to,
they do
get those.
update, they're thinking about doing that though?
Excuse me?
When they do update?
Yeah.
I'm
They
thinking with the
know
new
what we'd
update.
like to have it.
Oh, okay.
And we are getting monthly reports on our times from the dispatch center. They're trying to break it down the best they can.
And I will add, I've got those in my office. Any of you would like to review them, please come in.
Okay.
I do know that we could not operate without the dispatch center. And they-
You have to have it, but
Yeah,
I
we
just
have to
like,
have it.
I worry about y'all's safety out there. Whenever you listen to some of the calls, and back in the dark ages, we did status check on your officer to make sure he was okay. I don't ever hear that anymore.
Yeah, they usually do status check.
Okay.
If the officer requests it, they status check. If he's in a situation where.
I know, a broken-in building or something, you don't want to status check them, but on routine traffic,
Yeah,
yeah.
they routinely do status check, yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Anything else? If not, I'll call for the question.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, gentlemen. All those in favor of adopting Resolution 3296, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, very good. Thank
Feel
you.
like we have any choice.
We'll now go on to ordinances. First reading. Ordinance Bill number 1486 is a ordinance that authorizes us to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Natural Resources concerning the pilot project out at the at our landfill, closed landfill, I want to say. Councilman Moore, would you please present for first reading, title only, bill number 1486?
Yes. Bill number 1486, an ordinance authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton to sign all necessary documents in relation to the memorandum of understanding between the city of Fulton, Missouri and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources for the implementation of a native plant pollinator pilot project and establishing an effective date. I move this for second reading at next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Second. Thank you. Is there any, I have a motion and second to advance bill number 1486. Is there any discussion of this motion?
At the last time this was brought up, was that there's some paperwork required or something from them?
And we received that back.
did get
and-
it, okay.
and that's why it's being brought to you now.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Stone.
That was my same question,
Okay.
was it appeared to be the same document, but I thought we were looking for different verbiage.
We expected some changes and it came back the very same document, so you're correct on that too. Okay. Okay.
But the city administrator is okay with the document that we did receive?
That is my understanding.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If there's any changes that are required, we have two more readings, so
All right.
we'll bring them to you. Okay, yeah, call for the question. All those in favor of advancing Bill 1486, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Okay, very good. Thank you. 1486 will advance for second reading. We'll now consider ordinance bill number 1487, which has to do with the no parking in zones out on Business 54. Councilwoman Reclus, would you please present title only, bill number 1487?
Yes, sir. Bill number 1487, an ordinance amending Chapter 110, Traffic and Vehicle, Article 7, Stopping, Standing, Parking, Division 1, generally Section 110-340, parking in the certain streets prohibited or limited, Fulton City Code, by adding an additional street and establishing an effective date. I make a motion to place bill number 1487 for second reading at next regular scheduled meeting.
Second.
Very good, thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance bill number 1487 for second reading. Is there any further discussion of this motion?
Yeah, I have
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a question. This just pertained to Business 54. on the loading and unloading zone?
So I proposed that question to Prosecuting Attorney Sterner, and you have a copy of his letter. Based on his review of our ordinances that we have in place, he feels that it is addressed in our code. We might possibly be looking at altering some signs to say no stopping, standing, or parking in those areas of concern that we've talked about previously. Specific to the Business 54 section here, I know Kyle's going to be, I don't know if you've been in communication with MoDOT, or he will be in communication, just to make sure that that verbiage on the signs is going to work for their standards. But currently, our attorney believes that that loading and unloading section, as long as it's clearly stated on our signs, should not be an issue. So that's why it's not addressed in this ordinance.
Okay, thanks.
Very good.
Don't need to.
Any other questions? Concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor of advancing bill number 1487, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. We'll now consider bill number 1488, which has to do with adopting a tapping permit and a schedule of fees for that tapping into our sewer. Councilman Vaughn, would you please present by title only bill number 1488?
Bill number 1488, an ordinance amending Chapter 114, Utilities, Article 4, Sewers and Sewage Disposal, Division 3, Private Systems, by repealing Section 114-217, Permits, Fulton City Code, enacting a new section in its place, adopting a sewer tapping and reconnection permit, and establish an effective date. I make a motion to place Bill 1488 for second reading at the next scheduled meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance bill number 1488. Are there any questions, further questions, or?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I do.
I see Kyle coming.
I'm bringing him up.
Been getting the hook.
On the sewer main connection diagram, it shows a 4-inch clean out with a threaded brass plug. My house wouldn't be in compliance with this right now. Why are we specifying threaded brass? I think mine are PVC.
Mine all.
You got it. Just a PVC cap is what you have.
Yeah.
And what's shown on here is
I think so too.
is brass. We can clean that up.
Yeah, I just think we need to clarify that.
We can put at or equal, which is fine.
Yeah, okay. That's the only thing I saw. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Mine was, Kyle, the permit fee was 3 or 6, depending on the size. Now, I have lived in an old house, so I might be costing myself money, but is that really two prices, cover or reimbursement for sidewalk patch or asphalt patch? Or time and labor?
Probably not, but I think it's a price that is a starting point for discussion. So, we didn't want to go overboard. I mean, right now, I basically stuck a price in here, really, to be honest with you, Steve, as a placeholder for a starting point, knowing that our price right now that is $50 up front and you get $25 back after it's complete. I believe I'm looking at Kathy, she's shaking her head, so I got something right finally. And knowing what it is now and looking at what communities do around us, I think Moberly is comparable to that $300 price. Mexico, a lot of them are more expensive. Jefferson City and Columbia are quite a bit more expensive. So kind of looking at affordability.
But if you have a recommendation, then if you'd like us to look at actual costs and breaking it down each time, I mean, I think that just.
Well, I don't want to say I want to break it down each time, but I would like to maybe get more to the actual cost. And then, you know, you said if it's 1,000, and we said, well, now you went overboard, even though we know it's going to cost this money. So why don't we say like 700 or 750 or something? But I just, depending on how big the patch was on the sidewalk and the asphalt, and like I said, I could be costing myself, I could have to replace my sewer out there, and I know where mine go at in the road.
Right.
But I just, because, you know, we got rid of 50 cents garage sale things because it was a waste of your time and her time. So I'm thinking, hey, why don't we see what, if we can see what our actual cost is and get close to it, I would be happy with that.
Let me suggest that for the next reading that you have presented with this, a typical, whatever a typical sewer hookup's gonna be, and what you estimate the actual cost would be. And then we can take a look at, see how that compares with the fee structure.
Okay. Yeah, it'd probably be a per foot cost, because, I mean,
There's
some
no
are middle of the
perfect-
road, it's not.
I understand. Everyone's gonna be individualized, and just take one.
One thing to keep in mind with this is affordability, and the reasons for this really is to make sure the construction on the private sector, as it affects our utilities.
Let me suggest that we use Steve's house.
There we go.
And let us know what that would cost, okay?
But one thing quickly to keep in mind, though, is that the big thing is making sure that inspection happens, because the cost down the road to us, everything that the private
And you might
sector
break
bleeds
that
into
down,
us
what the inspection fee
affects
is.
us long term.
I guess I'm missing that. I thought I'd just seen $300 somewhere, and I'm not seeing that now. Where is that?
On the
Frequently asked questions number 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And, I mean, Mr. Hudson has all kinds of fees for different building permits. I think this would fall in line with that, right?
We're good. If there are not any other questions on bill number 1488, we'll ask for the question. All those in favor of advancing bill number 1488, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, very good, thank you. We'll now consider bill number 1489, which is an ordinance that places on the April ballot a proposal for the citizens to consider a use tax on internet sales. And so, Mrs. Gray, would you please present this ordinance by title only?
Bill number 1489, an ordinance imposing a use tax for general revenue purposes at the rate of 2.5% pursuant to the authority granted by the subject to the provisions of section 144.600 through 144.761 RSMO, provided for the use tax to be repealed, reduced, or raised, and providing for submission of the proposal to the qualified voters of the city of Fulton for their approval at the general election called to be held in the city on April the 3rd, 2018. Okay, I make a motion to place bill number 1489 for a second reading at the next regular scheduled council meeting.
Second.
Very good, thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance bill number 1489. Is there any further discussion of that motion?
I just have-
2.5, is that our current tax rate? Do we need to, does it need to be written in a way that it can change with our tax rate, or do we need to set this as a
All
specific
taxes.
number?
All
So-
taxes have,
Yeah.
that's what it says.
So this is
Approved by the
this
citizens.
is the model provided across the state from MML, and it is worded in such a way that if something does change, it will automatically change accordingly.
Okay.
I don't know that I like general revenue. Could we put this toward our park and recreation, building this ball field and all that thing?
Again, this
Nope.
is the model from the state.
Can't
This
go
is
anywhere.
what has been proven to work, and has been reviewed by many attorneys across the state.
Okay.
So therefore, that's what we need to use.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll discuss that further. Okay. Any other questions? I'll call for the question then. All those in favor of advancing 1489, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good, thank you. Bill number 1481, ordinance for second reading. It's an ordinance that adopts the official budget and capital improvements program for the city for the year 2018. Councilman Shiverdecker, would you please present bill number 1481, title only?
Yes, sir. Bill number 1481, an ordinance adopting an official budget and capital improvement program and appropriating the funds of the city for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2018 and ending December 31st, 2018. I make a motion that we advance bill number 1481 for third reading at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion of 1481? Hearing none, all those in favor of advancing 1481, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. Bill number 1481 will be considered for second reading next meeting. Third reading, excuse me. Bill number 1485 is a ordinance that establishes speed limits for Christopher Lane, Addison, and East Fifth Streets. Councilman Stone, would you please present 1485 by title only?
Presenting bill number 1485 for second reading by title only.
Okay.
An ordinance amending chapter 110, traffic and vehicles, section 110-248, speed limits, paragraph 3 of the code of the city of Fulton, Missouri, by lowering the speed limit on Christopher Lane, Addison Street, and East First Street to 20 miles per hour and establishing an effective date. I present this bill for second reading tonight and for third reading at our next scheduled meeting.
Second.
Very good, thank you. We have a motion to, and second on the floor to advance bill number 1485. Is there any further discussion of that motion?
Yeah, I'm asking why. 20 miles an hour is pretty slow.
It's not a block long.
It's a real short
It's
street.
the-
We had lots of discussion
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
last meeting, and it's the appropriate speed limit for this
And
It's
area.
only one block, block and a half, though, on First Street.
20 miles an hour is too slow.
No.
Well, on Christopher Lane, it's just a dead end of houses, so
Yeah,
if
you
you're
got-
breaking out, you
it has
just
to
run
be
into
done.
the apartments.
Didn't want to mess with it.
Because
Because
30
the
is too
residents
fast. People
complain.
are driving through it.
And they're going 40
They're
miles.
bypassing a intersection in order to do it, and they're doing it at 30 miles an hour.
Right there in that corner there.
Very good. Let's call for the question, and you, if you don't like it, you can vote against it.
And I will.
Like it, vote for it. Okay. All those in favor of advancing 1485, third reading, next meeting, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no.
No.
Very good, we have one no.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll now move on to third reading ordinances. Bill number 1484, which is an ordinance that establishes rates for rural wastewater connection. Councilman West, would you please present by title only Bill number 1484, third reading?
Sure. 1484 as amended, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 1432-17, enacting a new ordinance pertaining to a rural wastewater connection in its place and establishing an effective date. I move for this be advanced to the third reading at tonight's council meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I think you meant it.
For final
Advance it
passage.
for final consideration, right?
Oh, are
Because
we
this is the third.
Okay,
reading.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
very good, thank you. You've heard, okay. Bill number 1484 is amended is I have a motion second to advance it.
Can you remind me who did the second, please?
Wayne
Second.
and,
Thank you.
Wayne was one of them.
Okay.
Okay,
Are
go
we
ahead.
clear?
Do I need to clarify my motion?
No, we got it.
All right.
Any further discussion of the motion?
Is this duplicating our 1488, talking about the connections, residential and commercial? Or is it the fact this is going to be in the county?
This is that specific one that we've been discussing for months. This puts it at final approval.
Okay,
Puts it
that's
to
what I
rest.
needed clarified. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Very good. You've heard bill number 1484 presented 3 times. It's now time for final consideration or final vote. As the clerk reads the roll, would you please signify yes or no?
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Reclue?
Yes.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
And Mr. Shiland?
Yes.
8 council members affirmative.
Very good, thank you. That, we have no, okay, we do have a couple announcements here. Madam Clerk, you want to run over those?
Sure. Yep, the Fulton Stream Team is going to host their 2nd annual Scream Clean event on Sunday, October 29th from 2 to 4. If you have any additional questions, I'm sure Kyle can answer those for you. Our remaining council meetings for 2017 will be November 14th, November 28th, and December 19th. And one additional announcement is this is the week for fall cleanup, so we'll be doing special pickups on your regularly scheduled trash day. And that's it.
Very good, thank you.
JC says put a lot out there.
I do not have a need for executive session.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Have a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying yay.
Yay.
Okay.